Mary's one of my first artists. You know, so, like, she kind of put me on, I put her on. We taught each other a lot. We grew and kind of blew up with each other.
I started writing songs that where I wanted things to happen because I was already angry. And then I turned it over and said, you know what? Now it's time to start writing what I want.
Mary J. Blige, the queen of hip-hop soul, has a story that's as raw and riveting as her music. From the gritty streets of Yonkers to the dazzling lights of worldwide fame, Mary's journey has never been a fairy tale. It's been a battle. Her voice, a raspy mix of pain and power, became the soundtrack to millions of lives, but behind the scenes, her own life was a whirlwind of chaos, heartbreak, and secrets. If her songs told us anything, it's that Mary's truth is layered, and as her career skyrocketed, so did the whispers about the darker corners of her life, corners that even her most devoted fans couldn't see.
You know, for the people that want to do it and bring it and give it honestly, you have to have some kind of story, that's real.
Born into a world of turmoil, Mary was no stranger to hardship. Her childhood, spent in the concrete maze of the Schlobohm housing projects, was a lesson in survival. The streets didn't just raise her, they shaped her. Broken windows, broken spirits, and the echoes of late-night arguments were the backdrop of her youth. Her mother, a nurse with a love for soul music, tried to keep things together, blasting records by legends like Aretha Franklin and Chaka Khan in their tiny apartment. But even music couldn't drown out the struggles of a family torn apart. Mary's father, a troubled jazz musician, disappeared early on, leaving scars that would follow her for years. Mary's adolescence was a storm of emotions, a mix of rebellion and resilience. She armored herself in baggy clothes and a tough demeanor, trying to protect the fragile parts of her heart. But there was one place where her vulnerabilities couldn't hide: her voice. That voice, raw and untrained, was her escape. Singing at church or school talent shows, Mary found a way to let the pain out, even if she didn't realize it at the time. But her talent was undeniable, and fate had a way of finding her, even in the most unexpected places. In the moment that feels almost too cinematic to be real, Mary's big break came in a karaoke booth at a mall. 17 years old, working as a 411-year-old operator and already carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, she stepped into that booth and sang Anita Baker's Caught Up in the Rapture. It was a random decision, a dare, but that one recording would change everything. The tape found its way to Uptown Records, and suddenly, Mary was no longer just a girl from Yonkers. She was a voice that couldn't be ignored.
What's up, MJB?
What's up, Diddy?
I saw you. We was together last week in Italy.
But the music industry doesn't just amplify talent, it exposes it. And Mary's rawness, the very thing that made her special, also made her vulnerable. At Uptown Records, she found herself under the wing of an ambitious young producer named Sean Puffy Combs. From the beginning, their dynamic was electric. Puffy didn't try to polish Mary or turn her into something she wasn't. He wanted her exactly as she was, unfiltered, real, and dripping with the kind of pain. Together, they created something revolutionary, a fusion of R&B vocals and hip-hop beats that would come to define an entire era.
You are ignorant, disloyal, ungrateful, and I'm gonna call you a until you start acting like a woman.
But Puffy's mentorship came with its own complications. While the world saw him as her biggest supporter, those close to the scene whispered about the power dynamics at play. Puffy, always the orchestrator, had a way of pulling strings, and Mary, still finding her footing, became one of his most prized creations. Their bond was undeniable, but it was also tangled in layers of control and dependency. Mary owed much of her early success to Puffy, but that kind of debt comes with a cost. Her debut album, What's the 411, was a game changer. Tracks like Real Love and You Remind Me weren't just hits, they were anthems. Mary wasn't just singing, she was confessing. Fans felt like she was telling their stories, and in many ways, she was. But while the album catapulted her to stardom, it also laid bare the cracks in her foundation. Behind the scenes, Mary was spiraling. Fame didn't erase her pain, it magnified it. The pressures of the industry, combined with her own unresolved trauma, pushed her to the edge.
That fancy dog collar that Puff got around your neck and has had around your neck for the past 30 years, it should have been done got tight. It don't feel like a noose, Mary.
And then there was her relationship with Casey Haley of Jodeci, a romance as fiery as it was destructive. Mary and Casey were the couple everyone talked about, but not for the right reasons. Their chemistry was undeniable, but so was their volatility. Friends described their relationship as a constant storm, with moments of passion overshadowed by fights and betrayals. Mary later revealed the depth of the turmoil, admitting that she stayed in the relationship far longer than she should have, convinced that she didn't deserve better. It was a pattern she'd learned early in life, one she struggled to break. As her personal life unraveled, Mary poured everything into her music. Her second album, My Life, was less a record and more a diary set to beats. Songs like Be Happy and I'm Going Down captured the rawness of her struggles, resonating with fans who saw their own pain reflected in her lyrics. But the success of the album didn't bring peace. If anything, it deepened the divide between the Mary the world adored and the Mary who was still trying to hold herself together.
Because Puff was in control. P. Diddy, Honeycomb, was in control. Mary J. Blige has turned her back on almost everybody that's ever cared about her.
Through it all, Puffy remained a constant presence in her life. Their professional relationship was symbiotic. Mary gave voice to Puffy's vision, and Puffy gave Mary the platform to reach the masses. But their connection wasn't without its complications. Puffy's reputation for excess and control was no secret, and as his empire grew, so did the rumors. Whispers of wild parties, questionable deals, and power plays began to circulate, and Mary, ever loyal, found herself caught in the web. Over the years, Mary and Puffy's relationship evolved, shifting from mentor-protege to something more complex. They had their ups and downs, with periods of estrangement followed by public reconciliations. But even as they mended fences, there was always an undercurrent of tension. Puffy's influence was undeniable, but it wasn't always benign. And as his empire expanded, so did the questions about what really went on behind closed doors. For Mary, the cracks in her life became harder to hide. Her battles with addiction, her struggles with self-worth, and her tumultuous relationships all played out in the public eye. Yet, through it all, she remained a symbol of resilience. Fans admired her ability to rise above, to turn her pain into art. But those closest to her knew the truth. Mary's strength came at a cost.
Now we've done 3 others where we've laid out the prosecution case. This time, we're talking specifically, what is Diddy's defense? And we decided to test it with a mock jury, and it is fascinating.
It is absolutely fascinating, keeping in mind that the real jury will be sitting down to do this. The trial starts first week in May.
As the years went on, Mary began to distance herself from Puffy and the world they had built together. Publicly, she credited him with helping to shape her career, but privately, the rift between them grew. And now, with recent allegations surrounding Puffy coming to light, Mary's silence has never been louder. The woman who once stood by his side through thick and thin is now conspicuously absent from his corner. But what does Mary know? And how much of her own story is tied to Puffy's? The rumors swirling around him have cast a long shadow, and Mary's name has been whispered in conversations she'd rather not be part of. As the walls close in on Puffy, the spotlight is shifting, and the question on everyone's mind is, how deep does this go?
It always feels like that, especially before federal trials, because you get to read the indictment, you have all the, not all, but you have much of what the prosecution is going to be.
But there's something additional.
Of their strategy.
There's something additional here. You're right that they hear about all of that, but what they're also hearing is these other lawsuits that have been filed by all these civil law firms.
And as the spotlight on Mary's connection to Puffy grows brighter, the air is thick with questions that no one seems ready to answer. Puffy isn't just facing personal allegations. He's staring down the full weight of an industry that's been whispering his name in connection to some of the darkest corners of its history. It's no secret that power in the music world has often been used as a tool for manipulation, but the revelations coming out now don't just hint at corruption, they scream it. With Puffy at the center of a widening storm, the question isn't just about what he's done, it's about how deep the rock goes and who else might have been complicit. Because let's be real, no empire is built alone. Puffy's rise to the top of Bad Boy Records was meteoric, but it wasn't without its shadows. From his early days as a producer to his reign as one of the most influential figures in entertainment, there's always been an undercurrent of control, a whisper of something darker beneath the glossy image. The stories coming to light now paint a picture of a man who didn't just thrive in chaos, he orchestrated it. And while Mary may have distanced herself from him publicly, the fact remains, her name is tied to his in ways that can't be undone.
You're hearing about all these videos with celebrities, not going to be part of the criminal case. And
the Cassie video.
The Cassie video is going to be part.
Right.
We're going to get to that in a minute with the jury. But what we did was, number one, we showed them the prosecution's case from one of our documentaries. And then we showed them the defense from the current documentary.
The allegations against Puffy are not just about his own behavior. They implicate an entire network of enablers, people who allegedly turned a blind eye or outright facilitated his actions. Reports suggest that Puffy wielded his influence with precision, using his position to silence dissent and ensure loyalty. High-ranking employees, personal assistants, and even close friends are now being dragged into the narrative with accusations that they played roles in covering up or enabling questionable activities. These aren't just faceless insiders. These are people who were part of Puffy's inner circle, the ones who stood to gain the most from his success. And Mary? She was right there, at the heart of it all.
There has been no profit motive involved at all. The last word is profit.
He's already rich.
So whether or not he had the freak-offs or he did whatever.
Follow the money.
Well, there is no money.
Exactly.
I mean, the freak-offs aren't okay, the way in which I read it, it's not an illegal business. A freak-off is a freak, or whatever these things are, right?
Wrong. That's what my look.
But the profit, that last word actually got my attention because I was like.
But the whispers don't stop at loyalty and silence. There are accounts of Puffy allegedly leveraging not just his own power, but the reach of his entire network to keep potential exposés buried. Former associates have hinted at a culture of intimidation, where speaking out wasn't just discouraged, it was dangerous. From anonymous threats to sudden career roadblocks, the message was clear. Crossing Puffy came with consequences. And this wasn't just hearsay. Legal filings and insider testimonies point to a pattern of behavior that suggests a deliberate effort to maintain control, not just over his image, but over those who dared to question it. What's even more unsettling is the suggestion that Puffy wasn't acting alone. Insiders claim that his network extended far beyond his immediate team, reaching into the upper echelons of the entertainment world. Executives, media figures, even law enforcement. There are rumors that Puffy cultivated alliances with people in positions of power, ensuring that any potential fallout would be contained before it could spread. This isn't just about one man's alleged misconduct. It's about an entire web of influence that kept him untouchable for decades. And while names are starting to emerge, the full scope of this network remains shrouded in secrecy.
I think one thing that I haven't heard said at this table yet is bribery. So he probably promised a lot of these people either fame, fortune, riches. Whether or not he delivered, I doubt it. But that's another matter entirely, right? So that's obviously, if he incentivized some of these people in order to participate in all of these things, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Is that a definition, or does that fit a definition of coercion in any way, bribery?
The ripple effects of this control weren't limited to Puffy's own actions. Industry insiders have started to speak out about a culture that thrived under his watch, one where exploitation and manipulation weren't just tolerated, they were normalized. And for someone like Mary, who was deeply entrenched in Puffy's world, the question becomes, how much did she see and how much did she choose to ignore? Her silence now feels louder than ever, especially as more details emerge about the lengths Puffy allegedly went to in order to protect his empire. If these allegations are true, then the culture of fear and secrecy surrounding Puffy was far more calculated and far more widespread than anyone could have imagined. What's even more alarming is the growing evidence that this wasn't just about one man's behavior, it was systemic. Puffy's alleged actions reflect a culture within the industry that prioritized profit and power over accountability. Think about it. How many times have we seen stories like this surface, only for them to be swept under the rug? How many careers have been sacrificed? How many voices silenced to protect the image of a few untouchable figures? Puffy's trial might be the headline, but it's pulling back the curtain on an entire system that's been festering for decades.
The big thing that is really interesting, and it's going to be a big problem for the defense if you look at this mock jury, the Cassie video. He is not being prosecuted for it. That's a state crime in California, and the statute of limitations is run. But I am telling you, that video was thunderous for a bunch of these jurors.
And it's not just the industry insiders who are speaking out. The legal documents alone are enough to make your head spin. Details of lavish parties that allegedly served as fronts for manipulation, coercion, and worse. Testimonies from individuals who claim they were lured into Puffy's orbit under false pretenses, only to find themselves trapped in situations where they had no control. It's the kind of story that sounds like it was ripped from the pages of a dark thriller, except it's playing out in real life and in real time. The timing of these revelations is no accident. Puffy's empire has been under scrutiny for years, but it's only now that the pieces are starting to fall into place. His recent legal battles have opened the floodgates, with more and more individuals coming forward to share their experiences. Some are seeking justice. Others are simply looking for closure. But the common thread in all their stories is clear. Puffy's influence was as far-reaching as it was devastating.
we've talked about the fact that there's sometimes videos or photos or what don't get admitted to a case because they're
overly
prejudicial.
Right. This is getting admitted. Both sides.
It's definitely getting admitted.
Both sides agree. It's going to be admissible. The defense has a hurdle to jump. I will tell you that they vote in the end, and the vote may surprise you.
And then there's the money. Puffy's wealth and success have always been a point of pride for him, but they're also a key part of the story. Allegations of hush payments, settlements, and financial manipulation are now coming to light, painting a picture of a man who used his resources to maintain control at all costs. These aren't small sums we're talking about. These are life-changing amounts, the kind of money that can buy silence and loyalty in equal measure. And while Puffy's legal team is working overtime to discredit these claims, the sheer volume of evidence is hard to ignore. What makes this all the more chilling is the ripple effect it's having on those around him. Take Mary, for example. Her decision to step away from Puffy might seem calculated, but it's also incredibly telling. For years, she stood by his side, even as the rumors swirled. Now, with the walls closing in, she's distancing herself faster than anyone could have predicted. Is it self-preservation, a genuine desire to move on, or is there something more she's not saying? The timing is suspicious, to say the least.
You're disrespectful to women. For real, you're probably the Jeffrey Epstein of hip-hop.
And let's not forget the other names being dragged into this mess. Puffy's associates, former collaborators, and even his family are all under scrutiny. It's a domino effect, with one revelation leading to another, each one more shocking than the last. The question isn't just about who knew, it's about who helped, who stayed silent, and who might still be hiding the truth. And if the whispers are to be believed, the list of names is longer than anyone wants to admit. What's perhaps most disturbing is the sense that this is just the beginning. The more you dig into Puffy's past, the more questions arise. How was he able to maintain his empire for so long without facing consequences? Who protected him and why? And what does this mean for the future of an industry that's already teetering on the edge of a reckoning? These aren't just rhetorical questions. They're the kind of questions that demand answers, the kind that could change everything. But while Puffy's legal battles rage on, the spotlight on Mary is only getting brighter. Her connection to him, once seen as a badge of honor, is now being scrutinized in ways she likely never anticipated. And as more details emerge, the pressure on her to speak out, or at least clarify her role, will only grow. Because in an industry built on image and perception, silence can be just as damning as complicity.
Will you help me? I want to hear your music. So I come over there and I play the music. And he's sitting there, just looking at me, like waiting. Okay. So then my assistant was like, you know, he wants to hang out with you next week. And I was like, for what? He's like, I think he's trying to you. That's what my assistant said. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it. So now no more communication.
So where does this leave us? With more questions than answers. And a story that seems to unravel further with each passing day. Puffy might be the one on trial, but the implications of this case go far beyond him. It's a wake-up call for an industry that's long overdue for accountability. A reminder that power without checks and balances is a dangerous thing. And for Mary, it's a crossroads, a moment where she'll have to decide whether to stand firm in her narrative or face the consequences of a past that refuses to stay buried. What do you think? Is Mary's sudden distance from Puffy a sign of self-preservation, or is there more to the story than meets the eye? And if Puffy's empire really does collapse, who else might be caught in the fallout? Let us know your thoughts down below. And trust us, we're just scratching the surface here. Stay tuned. There is so much more to unpack.